This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome the CEO and co-founder of Prettydamnquick, Avi Moskowitz. Welcome, Avi.
Thanks, Jason. We're pretty damn excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm damn excited to have you along for the ride today. I have to give a big shout out to Isaiah over at Trellis who introduced us. I wasn't aware of you or your technology prior to that introduction. It was an amazing introduction. He said, you have got to speak to Avi because he is doing some incredible stuff in our industry that I haven't seen anybody else even working on or trying to tackle. Then we followed that up with a little bit of an initial chat. I think we had about 15 or 20 minutes together, and you started to tell me a little bit about what Prettydamnquick is and why you created it. And then I was like, hang on a second, this is too exciting for me to keep to myself. It's time to have you on the podcast so that we can actually talk about it properly and in detail and share with the world what Prettydamnquick is. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And look, I was also saying off air before we started recording that I think that what I love about you and others like you in our industry are that you're very opinionated on areas that you have deep experience with. And you are very opinionated on how these challenges and opportunities in our industry should be approached. And I think it's really important to have strong opinions in our industry because there's a lot of followers. There's a lot of Me Tooism in our industry, particularly in B2C, D2C, fashion, certain verticals. There's a lot of FOMO. There's a lot of, here's the tech stack that my top competitor uses, so I'm going to use that tech stack. Here's the UX, UI experience that Apple creates, so we're going to try to create an Apple-like UI, UX. Here's what Amazon does, so here's what we're going to try to do. They're doing Prime. We're going to try to create a membership program to try to catch up with Prime. There's so much following happening in our industry. And I understand why that is because business owners are so busy just trying to keep their head above water that when they look out there, they are always looking for the newest, shiniest thing, but it doesn't always serve them well. And I think that it's really important to have a strong opinion based on a belief system born out of experience and blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that's what you bring to the table.
Thanks. Yeah. And there's so much that you've said that needs to be unpacked because there's a lot there, right? E-commerce is a world unto itself. You have macro, what's going on broadly in the e-commerce market, what's happening in particular industries, looking at what we call somewhat the enemy, Amazon, and what they're doing and how that impacts us, and maybe they're frenemies because we also use them as a channel. And there is quite a bit to unpack here. And we're also approaching BFCM, our favorite time of the year, and all the things that brings with it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this chat. There's just plenty to unpack.
And what's exciting about this is you've been in this industry for a long time now. You've been building out Prettydamnquick for over 4 years, but you also have been a merchant. You've been almost like a D2C merchant through Beer Bazaar. You grew your brand into the top craft brewery in Israel. You are based in Tel Aviv. You ran a marriage. Basically, you're a serial entrepreneur. If I look back across your history, you're a serial entrepreneur, and now you are building a technology that serves entrepreneurs and serves business people. So you're not coming at this from a lack of experience of being on the front lines of retail, business, and entrepreneurship. It is that experience that actually brought you to the place where you felt like you needed to create something new in the world because it didn't exist yet.
Absolutely. And there's so much to that, Jason, in terms of what drives me every day is the fact that we are supporting entrepreneurs. We're helping merchants, people like so many of those that are trying to support themselves, the community, and even when they get large, excuse me, that startup spirit remains, that passion to create, the 0 to 1 is just something because every day you're creating. And this particular journey began as a result of my last chapter, which is building a craft beer company, launching it just as COVID was hitting and having to pivot very quickly, going from a shutdown option to suddenly, guess what? People actually do buy alcohol online. And guess what? We were lucky enough to have spent the last year preparing our website for e-commerce without anybody selling alcohol online. My mom used to say, if you work hard enough, sometimes you get lucky. And that was definitely one of those situations where we found ourselves in just the right place at the right time. But there was a lot that we didn't realize was missing, which is what happens after orders come in. And this is like classic entrepreneurial spirit. I'm guilty of it myself. The sexiest part of running a business is bringing customers in, getting their eyes lit up when they see the product and getting them to get that cha-ching. You put it through the register. And in retail, there isn't really logistics. It's a shopping bag, right? You put the item into a bag, you walk out of the store, and you're done. But little did we know when we were launching the site and facing the crazy amount, like hundreds of orders a day, some days over thousands a day, and in COVID, knowing that there's something that follows after the order is placed. And that whole logistics, fulfillment, delivery set me on this path. And I would say, honestly, the trauma of what we went through made an indelible impression on me for that I carry with me till today, where I understand what merchants have to go through to deliver their product, where probably before that moment, in my mind, like most consumers, there's a stork or a whole bunch of them that hang out above your home waiting to deliver the product after you hit the checkout button. It magically appears. And when I actually went through the process, it's like a whole underworld that exists from the moment the order comes in to the time it gets delivered to you. And we lived through that. We went through the process from picking, packing, understanding complexity of bundling, understanding the complexity of geographies, and all kinds of other things. So we lived the logistics, fulfillment, delivery nightmare and challenges and had to overcome them for ourselves. But just as importantly, we realized that even if I solve this, if I'm not communicating it to the customer, I really haven't benefited a whole lot, because customers today are getting, and they've been accustomed, but even getting more accustomed to the fact that they're shopping on Amazon. Whether we're merchants or customers, we've shopped on Amazon. There's very few people, none that I've met in the developed world, that haven't shopped on Amazon. And Amazon has done a great job in setting the expectation that you're going to formulate an aggressive delivery promise and then deliver on that promise. And if you're anything less than that, in all likelihood, that customer is going to come to Amazon, right? Because that optionality exists. If you're a highly specialized item, the experience and the expectation is still that this is a great item. I'd love to get it from you, but I want to see that Amazon experience. So we realized very early on that as much as I'd love to solve a part of this problem, there's no way to really solve this if we don't have all the data in one place at the same time. And fundamentally, that's one of the biggest challenges when you think about Shopify versus from the moment you pick up that item, they know that Sally in Kansas City and Dave in North Carolina and Charlotte are pulling that item from the two different warehouses because it happens to be split inventory on one order. And they know how it's going to get picked and packed, what time it will be, what box it's going into, and exactly when it's going to get delivered from the moment you picked up the item. That's the power of data. And if nothing else, we're living in a generation of data. And forget AI and the magical things that are being presented, but there's a very practical side to data that says there are hundreds, if not thousands, of data points that are informing for Amazon what it is and exactly the promise that they're going to be able to deliver to that customer from the moment they enter their store. So think about the contrast between what most people go through on Amazon and what most people go through on e-commerce today. On Amazon, you pick up that pen, and from the moment that you pick up that pen, they're screaming, this is when you'll get it, how you'll get it. These are your options for delivery, the cost, all those different things. So we had to build a platform which, first and foremost, brings all that data together so that we can start to speak to customers in a way that speaks to them individually. So it's not just about delivery. That's certainly a portion of it. But that information and that data actually drives every aspect of the different segments of customers coming through your site. So the most apparent way is through delivery, because you as a customer are not seeing all the other bands of customers that are there with you, right? You might be a first-time customer, returning customer. This might be a third or fourth or fifth order. Each of those are going to influence what you're being presented, the options you're being presented, the upsells you're being presented, where the geography of the items are. There's so many considerations, day of week, time of day, all those have to be taken into consideration, which means that for us, we have to be able to speak about a specific customer and understand that customer for where they are, what their expectation is, and providing them with the options that are most likely going to get them over the finish line, get them to convert. Because in retail, there's a very small problem of abandonment. Very few people get to the cash registers and say, I'm leaving. They're more likely grabbing bubble gum, whatever last Ricola, whatever those last minute items are that retail stores have gotten so good at presenting, you end up buying more, not less. And in e-commerce brands outside of Amazon, you're looking at a crazy abandonment rate. It could be north of 50%. We've seen 60 and 70%. And that's a $270 billion a year problem. So as much as we'd like to have a feature that solves that, so there are features out there that once the customer leaves the store and they haven't purchased and they abandon, then say, hey, I got, no, hang on a second, I got an offer for you. It's almost like chasing a guy out of a retail store and say, I got one more thing to show you.
Yeah.
That we have a lot of things that still, e-commerce is young, there's still a lot of opportunity. And for us, we realized that we're going to have to get into the guts of this beast to extract all the data from all the different data points, the carriers themselves, the 3PLs, whether you're doing your own fulfillment, the support platforms you're using, the email platforms you're using, everything, all that different data, and be able to bring it into a normalized place where we can provide brands with an advantage of being able to communicate the way that Amazon does. And just to highlight the effectiveness of this, we have brands that are actually competing with themselves on Amazon. So they know how effective they've been on Amazon. Now they're trying to mirror that experience and own that customer brand relationship, which is something, the reason that we joke and Amazon's the enemy. They're serving a great purpose, but they're extracting the customer from the brand. And that obviously is not our goal in serving entrepreneurs and helping them be successful. There's so much opportunity here. A very big part of it came from our own learnings. But I have to say that as we've gone into this market and diversified into so many different brands, so many great brands out there, they've challenged and given us all kinds of unique situations that we've been able to solve for them by learning together. What is it that makes an impact? Just as an example, there's so much psychology to this e-commerce. I think that's another reason why it's so much fun, because when you really get down to it, this is not just about dollars and cents. It's really about understanding this particular customer at this particular moment of time, what's in their basket or their cart, and what's going to get them over the finish line. And we've seen some like unusual things, counterintuitive. There's obviously the intuitive things, which are remove any of the confusion from checkout and your conversion goes up, right? Surprise. But how many checkouts out there have these conflicting options? One option, 1 to 5 days, second option's 2 to 4 days, a third option, 3 to 6 days. And the brand hasn't paid attention to it, but from a consumer perspective, they're genuinely confused. I love your product, but if you don't understand when you can deliver, there's a high likelihood you're not going to deliver. You're certainly not going to deliver and meet my expectations. And the indicator, probably the biggest indicator of the challenge that we're facing with checkout confusion, is that the vast majority of support tickets that come into e-commerce sites come in the same day or the next day after an order is placed. Now, as much as consumers don't understand the delivery process, they're pretty sure they're not getting the order that day or the next day. The reason they're reaching out is, I know I placed the order, but can you tell me when I'm going to get it? And that's why the vast majority of those support tickets are Wizmo tickets. Where's my order? Because you haven't done the job of communicating effectively with me for me to be able to understand when I'm going to get that order. And it sounds simple. And from a consumer perspective, it certainly seems like an easy thing to do because they experience it with every Amazon order they place. But from a brand perspective, it's very scary, because the only thing worse than making a delivery promise is failing to deliver as promised. And that's where you hurt your retention and brand and all those other things. So it's a very fine balance that we manage. And we've had to create a very robust platform with dashboards, with all the built-in levers, because things will happen. And suddenly there's a hurricane and tornadoes and storms and all kinds of crazy things that'll happen that will affect delivery, but we're able to proactively communicate with the customer using the integrations we have to the various support platforms and email platforms. And this way we can say, hey, Jason, really sorry, we're going to disappoint you. Here's a coupon. And even the coupon has the intelligence of understanding what kind of impact we made. Is it really disappointing, slightly disappointing? And be able to have it be as relevant and as empathetic as we possibly can be, knowing that we're going to disappoint you. But think about the difference of hearing about it before and giving you optionality versus hearing about it after. So that's some of the fun stuff that we've been involved in. The most rewarding part of it is the impact that it makes. One of our brands, Laura Geller, we put a teaser out just yesterday of the case study that's going to be released in the next couple of days. It's over $3 million that we've made for them in a relatively short period of time. It's on my LinkedIn post. I shared it, but the numbers are staggering. And I think that's the piece that I wasn't expecting when we were first solving this problem, because I was solving more of a customer service problem. So many people unhappy, and I can't continue disappointing. How do I change that? And then seeing the correlation between solving this problem and how it impacts the unit economics of businesses has been fascinating and incredibly rewarding.
Wow, you have given me so much to digest and unpack and unpick there. But I think where I'd like to start is the fact that anybody who either doesn't work in e-commerce who has never set up their own store, Shopify store, or whatever store it might be, someone who has never had to deal with logistics, someone who's never had to run a warehouse or integrate with a 3PL, or someone who's never really had to think about the logistics of e-commerce, because in essence, e-commerce is logistics with a customer-facing front end attached to it. That's effectively what e-commerce is. Mm-hmm. And I think for those that have never had to work in this space or had to really think about this, and they've let technical people or business system people or solution architects or agencies deal with all this for them, they don't really understand the complexity of both the technology and the operations and the consequential impact on the customer experience that brings to the table. Because when we think about all the things that we're trying to communicate in the checkout, we're trying to communicate pricing. We're trying to communicate unit quantities. We're trying to communicate potential promotions, cross-sells, upsells, substitutions. We're trying to communicate free shipping thresholds. We're trying to communicate the detail that we're trying to collect from name, from address, from delivery instructions, from delivery timings, if somebody has a specific delivery timing and date that they want something delivered. We're trying to communicate the payment methods that are available to the customer. We're trying to communicate the shipping methods and timelines and costs for each of those options to the customer. So we're actually trying to jam in so much stuff into the checkout space that it does feel overwhelming to the consumer. And even me, who I try to do 5+% of my shopping online, including grocery, even sometimes I get overwhelmed with some of the options and some of the hoops I have to jump through at checkout on some of these direct consumer websites. It's a little daunting. And then when we think about the post-purchase experience, the tracking information and the systems and technologies that are out there to allow people to effectively track their orders, whether that be directly on the courier's website or a tracking aggregator engine that's embedded in the customer UI in my account. And then we think of the returns component, and we think about the likes of Loop Returns and other return management portals and technology. We're talking. And then when we think about, do we want to present real-time rates and opportunities and shipping methods? Do we want to do it based on a matrix? And do we want to incentivize shipping options in some way based on the composition of the cart and who the customer is? When we think about how much is involved in trying to create a fantastic, as close to frictionless experience as possible in checkout, it's all but impossible. It's a really big ask. And somebody like Amazon, sure, they've mastered it to a large degree, but they still have their challenges. And I don't like the fact that they don't like to expose their shipping data and tracking data to companies like Google and email tracking platforms. And so the emails, the follow-up emails that they send are totally cryptic, and basically they only provide a link that you then have to click on and go back into your account to see anything to do with the shipment. They'll say maybe this packet is due to arrive today, but you don't even know which item that's referring to in an order because it doesn't list it in the actual follow-up emails, because they don't want people to grab a hold of their tracking data as it goes through the email chain. So even vaunted Amazon creates friction, intentionally creates friction throughout the fulfillment journey in the desire to control their customers' data and not expose it to any ecosystem outside of Amazon. So this is such a crazy world when we think about just anything to do with logistics, checkout, and customer experience. I see why merchants get overwhelmed. I see why they feel overwhelmed. They don't know whether they need to use the out-of-the-box shipping rates engine in a Shopify, whether they should do matrix rates, real-time rates, whether they should use a carrier aggregator, whether you should use a rules engine like Shipper HQ. Merchants, it's like dicing with death when you're trying to create a frictionless checkout, isn't it?
It really is. And then you take it a step further, because everything we're talking about is operational. And most entrepreneurs like myself really don't come at this from an operational point of view. We come at it with a marketing, capture the market, CAC, the metrics that
Customer
matter,
experience
ROAS, the
perspective.
metrics that matter to us is, yeah, all customer experience. But when the digital world meets the physical world, when you have that intersection, everything goes haywire. Now I have a physical box, right? Am I optimizing for that box? Am I getting as much into the box as possible? Am I thinking about checkout in a way where I know which items are in the box? I know the volumetrics of the box. I know the volumetrics of the items. So I know which upsells to make. That's a very different offer that you can make because it's just shipping it once. Going to rates, right? So here we go into BFCM, and suddenly we've got surcharges to kazoo. UPS has unleashed their full playbook of surcharges going into the season. USPS announced 40% increases. It's the world's gone mad with shipping, and shipping today is a very significant portion of the profits that are left. It's eating a chunk of the revenues. So when you look at all those different pieces that are contributing, do I use live rates like you alluded to, Jason? Do I automatically add something to it? Do I take something away? And then when you're able to look at customers the way that we look at them, with a first time customer perspective, returning customer perspective, let's just take those two segments. If I know my LTV, my lifetime value of a customer is $200, and this is the first time they're coming into my site, and I know that my overall cost, because I have my cost of goods, because I'm good, I keep it in Shopify. I know my shipping cost, because we help you with that. I know my fulfillment costs, we help you with that. And I'm even able to have an idea of what my CAC is, because we can help you with that, the blended cost. Now the customer, first time customers in checkout, and I can see what their cost is and how much margin I'm willing to take for this first time customer, or potentially how much I'm willing to potentially lose for this first time customer, because the LTV is there. I have the history. I know that information is going to prove this to be a profitable checkout for me. So I'm able to get aggressive and say, let me discount shipping. Let me give maybe free shipping for this particular order. Let me provide expedited shipping because it's a large enough cart size and I know what my overall cost is going to be. So suddenly you're able to look at your checkout not as an operational tool, but actually as a profit engine. And you can work it both ways. All right. So come along with this journey with me and imagine that you're able to look at your checkout with all the key metrics identified. Your CAC, how much it costs to get the customer in. So you've already spent that money there here at checkout. Your fulfillment costs, your shipping costs, take everything into consideration. And now understanding what this customer is to me, I can look at the discounts they've applied. I can look at the items they have in the cart. I can even identify a high return item or a customer who is a high return customer. You can take this pretty far and then say, what's the value of this customer to me? And then evaluate what shipping options you're going to offer at what prices. And to a great extent, if checkout's used that way, you can actually use it as an anchor for securing your unit economics and your profitability going forward. And that's how our brands are using us today. It's transformative.
And I think you hit the nail on the head in that, and maybe you haven't even necessarily contextualized it in this way, but merchants spend so much time, money, effort, and love to personalize every aspect of the website journey except for checkout. And so the challenge is when we look at search merchant personalization platforms, they're expensive, but they're amazing, and the ROI on those platforms is incredible. So whether you're looking at an Algolia, whether you're looking at a Bloomreach, whether you're looking at particular audience, there's probably Nosto, doesn't really matter which platform you're looking at out there from a search, merch, and personalization perspective. All of these platforms, they might do it slightly different ways, but they all bring incredible ROI. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. And they're almost all enterprise platforms, so they're not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. But the ROI is so good because they bring such intense personalization to the table that the customer genuinely feels like you've got a crystal ball about the types of things that they're going to want and love as they're going through their shopping journey. Now, what happens is then you get to the checkout and nothing beyond that point, apart from maybe in the cart, some product recommendations, some upsells, some cross-sells, whatever, that's all fine and good, and the personalization stops after the cart. So the personalization stops at the checkout, right? And so, sure, maybe some brands will show the loyalty points that they're going to get or the free shipping threshold that they've qualified for, but that's as far as the personalization goes, right? And if I'm reading between the lines here, what you're saying is personalization should absolutely extend into the checkout because that is where so much e-commerce profitability is won or lost. And that is also so much where the friction is such that's so much where the conversions are won or lost. That's where abandonments are won or lost. This is the battle for the hearts and minds of your customers is oftentimes won or lost in the checkout, not in the cart, not in the browsing experience, not in the shopping experience, but at the checkout, the moment where they have to pull out their card details and actually pay for the order. And it's hard to put your platform and your technology in a box because you're not an OMS. You're not really what I would consider like a rates engine or you're not trying to be an order management system. You're not trying to be necessarily a carrier aggregator or just a carrier aggregator. You're not trying to be just a rates engine or a dynamics rates engine. You're trying to solve this challenge much more holistically than any one of those individual point solutions ever could.
Yeah. Jason, thanks. That was very helpful because I think you crystallized it in a way that I hadn't until now. And another way that I describe it is virtually look at Klaviyo's penetration in the Shopify's ecosystem. It's like crazy. So you don't even need to look at the enterprise kinds of solutions. But when it comes to communications, if your communication manager said to you, we're going to send the same email to our entire base every day, every time, with every
You'd fire
offer
them
we make,
instantly.
you'd say, what are you, crazy? And yet, in checkout, you have no problem doing that. And that's exactly what we're bringing to checkout is that segmentation, is that personalization. But we couldn't do it without bringing all the data together. And that's why, in a funny way, most of the time we begin our brand journeys taking them through the initial experience the customer is going through, getting them a great product display page with estimated delivery times, with all the things data driven that are going to get the customer to move from product page to checkout and then checkout to optimize that experience. And that's where most of our initial energy is spent because value for money, it comes very quickly. It pays for itself. And the ROI for us is very clear. We're able to demonstrate it clearly. But then after we've done that, brands go, you're an OMS and you also can do live rates and you can also do exception management like hazmat and dry ice. And you can even do our picking and packing and you can integrate with 3PLs and you do tracking pages and you integrate with Gorgeous, Gladly, and Clear. It becomes overwhelming, which is why we start with let me give you value quickly, easily, nothing you need to do. There's just money being left on the table. And then we explain that we needed to build these operational components to get you the data that provided you that uplift. But now you can benefit from all those operational things that we do so you can continually optimize. Don't, this is all about baselining, right? You start here, we're going to bring you there, and then let's keep moving you forward because it's all about continued optimization. You can bet that Amazon, with every order they're placing, they're taking their learning and applying it to the next thing.
To the next order.
So, yeah, that's the next order.
And I think, do you have that you're aware of? And I've been in this game for a long time. I've been in this game for over 20 years. I've never heard of a platform that kind of competes or is even trying to do what you do, because they all are, most platforms are attacking slivers of the problem, not necessarily the whole problem, right? And you're right, if you're not taking into account at the customer level cost to serve, for example, or at the product level, cost to serve, return rates, all that sort of stuff, the cost to ship that individual at SKU level, the challenges around additional packaging because it might be fragile for that particular SKU, so the time and the amount of packing material is different for that particular parcel versus another parcel. That parcelization algorithm in terms of knowing the size of the cartons you use versus the size and the dimensions and volumetric weight of the items that are in the cart at the time. There's so much to this that, like, I'm not aware. Are you aware of anyone else in the industry right now that you even see as a competitor that you go into these merchant engagements and they're going, we're choosing between you and these 1-2 other platform technologies? Or do you feel like this is so blue ocean right now that, sure, maybe someone will come along in the future that's a competitor, but you have such a unique viewpoint on this that no one has really thought of this yet?
Yeah. So I would say that it's a great point, Jason. And certainly we believe this is the future. So with the future brings competition. And I think people are rethinking about how I can get the data and into one place so it's actionable and I can do things with it. So you're beginning to see a strong focus on data and data solutions with the intent of informing the brands about what they should do. The challenge is that if you start with data, even if you collect it all, making it actionable is very hard. How do you
How do
dynamically
you operationalize
change
that?
all
How
those
do you
things?
operationalize that?
How do you operationalize it, right? So the reason that we're in this unique position, as it happens most of the time, was accidental. I had to solve the operational challenges of our business before I can think about how I get the data where it needs to be. And as I started touching those operational challenges, it's an onion. I started peeling away at something that looked like 2 layers or 3 layers, and we're probably 1,000 layers in. And now we have Jenny's Ice Cream as a brand that uses our platform. So think about the complexity of something that has the shelf life it has, that's producing a specific number of flavors every day based on their production capabilities from each of the different fulfillment points that they have, presenting to the customer who's within the proximity that can get this flavor produced by this particular fulfillment center. When you go to that extreme, you realize that you first need to understand all the complexity of operations before you can even begin to formulate a delivery promise. Otherwise, there's plenty of tools out there that let you change your product page and put in a date and time and do the same thing on checkout. But for the most part, you're just getting yourself into trouble because if you forget to factor in the weekend, or heaven forbid, a presidential or July 4th weekend, or if you don't take into effect that on Mondays, your fulfillment SLA is till 1 o'clock, and other days it's still 3 o'clock, or using the actual data to say whatever they told me isn't really true because at 12 o'clock they stop packing up new orders or handling split orders. And it just goes
International
down
versus
so many
domestic
different
shipments,
rabbit
etc.
holes. Yeah. Duties, taxes, and orders that potentially have both of the components in place. There's so much that needs to be considered that we were fortunate to bite into the harder side of this problem, which is operational, and build the operational components like a real order management system that supports businesses that do self-fulfillment, but also use 3PL and also do BOPIS, pick up from store. And that's where businesses are going. You think about omni-channel and using every channel available to you. You need the complexity of your operation to support you. Otherwise, that'll quickly become your bottleneck, your limitation. What's crazy about this is Most brands think about how do I differentiate to bring the customer into the store? But the ultimate scale comes from the operational efficiencies that you've designed into your business. And some of the most amazing brands are the ones that have that problem solved and solve it in the most elegant way possible and are continually chipping away at making it more and more efficient, better, more cost effective, and a better experience for the customer.
Now, it would seem to me that amidst all this, that, like you say, peeling the onion, it's all fine and good if you've got a UI, a management UI for the merchant to use. It's all fine and good if you create a fantastic UI component, whether that be like a JavaScript snippet that creates a UI component in the PDP page or in the checkout page or whatever it might be. That's all fine and good. But system integrations, to me, feel like the absolute lifeblood of your platform. So if you're not integrated with ERP, if you're not integrated with POS, if you're not integrated in with customer service platforms, if you're not integrated in with the marketing automation platforms, if you're not integrated in with the CDP if they've got one, if you're not integrated in with the CRM if they've got one, if you're not integrated in with the carriers in real time, if you're not integrated, basically, without system integrations, you would not be able to do what you do. And these are, in many cases, these are not light integrations. They're oftentimes webhook-based integrations. They're real-time integrations so that you don't slow down the checkout process. And so
Not
that
to
you
mention
can,
that.
sorry, you go ahead. So not to mention.
Yeah, I was saying not to mention FTP. We actually have using for people that are not familiar. That's like the original internet protocol is file transfer
Yes.
protocol, which is
Yes.
it's almost like running around with a
Get
floppy
us a
disk.
CSV. Yeah.
But yeah,
Let's get one file from this system, export it, dump it onto a server somewhere, and then our system will come and pick that file up and ingest it and process it. And because checkout, that response or that proposal to the customer around what shipping options they have, how much it's going to cost them, if anything, what the pros and cons of each one are down to the carrier level, to be able to generate those options in near real time, it's pretty phenomenal, and it requires a level of deep data science, data engineering, integration engineering, data sources. It requires a level of thought that I'm sure that when you first got into this, you thought, oh, this is going to be an easy problem to solve. And you probably thought, we're never going to necessarily externalize this. You didn't go into building this with necessarily the idea that we're just eating our own dog food here and we're eventually going to monetize this. But I'm sure that when you first got into this, you didn't necessarily realize, A, how many sources of data you would need to get data from and ingest data from, but you probably also didn't think, geez, we're now actually going to have to be the data hub, almost like a CDP, not quite a CDP, and not quite a full-blown OMS like you would get in an ERP, but we are the essential bridge between all these systems to make them work better and harmonize that experience in the checkout. Because as I said, merchants already personalized the shopping journey, but not necessarily the buying journey. And they personalize the marketing journey and the marketing experience. And they personalize so many other aspects and touch points of this relationship that they're building with their customers. But they don't necessarily optimize or personalize the buying experience. And that feels like the difference they bring to the table.
yeah. And there's so much of what you said that literally tells our story the way it is, because when you think about the Shopify ecosystem, there were what, like 10,000 plus apps out there today. It
Harley said
actually comes
recently
from
that it's
a
12,000.
position of, there you go. So well, over the past couple of weeks since since I was in Toronto last, it's growing phenomenally. And I think it encourages other kinds of entrepreneurs, like SaaS related entrepreneurs who are looking to build solutions for Shopify, to think about specific point problems. And that's really, I came to the problem the same way. That's why it didn't look like an onion, it looked like an apple, right? Peel it away, just and we're done. Because I was thinking that how big a problem could this be? And once you start getting into the logistics, fulfillment, delivery piece of it, and once you start touching promise, you realize how much you're unpacking, and it's no longer a feature. So, in terms of how we ended up with a platform and not a feature, it's because at a point in time we realized we're not solving for a specific problem. every day, and many times, multiple times a day, our brands are telling us, I have a unique situation. This is what happened. Can you handle it? Here's a great real life situation that we had. We multi-carrier is a great option for brands. It gives you leverage. And even though UPS will tell you, no, if you give one package away to FedEx, your rates are gonna go up. If you do it right, you save a ton of money, and especially as shipping goes up, multi-carrier done right can save you a ton of money. But you need a system in place. And when we first were building out our platform, we started with one carrier before two. This is in the very early days, still in our beer business. And we put two pallets out for the two delivery companies. And of course, even though we had them labeled, delivery company A picked up B and delivery company B picked up A. So here we are, two different parts of the country with pallets that they can't read because it's not their labels. And we learned very quickly we need a feature that says, regardless of the label, be able to reprogram the barcode so it can be scanned and reprogrammed given any kind of situation. Now, who in their right minds would think about that as a feature in building a module that allows you to print shipping labels? It doesn't make sense, because why would you have a shipping label that says UPS produce an FedEx label, or vice versa? Like, where would that even come from? So we added a neutral barcode on every single label so that if that were to happen, we're able to not have these massive delays and costs of bringing the pallets back, relabeling them and getting them out. But there are so many of those kinds of situations that happen every day. And you know them. It happens because of address issues. So many, when we look at the things we check for after checkout to prevent delays in the order, we have over 40 different boxes that you can check for validating an order before it goes out, because that also will disappoint the customer. But you hit it on the head. You can't solve this problem by building a feature. We had to build a platform, and this platform has to be fully integrated, not just internally with everything we do, not just with Shopify, not just with the carriers, not just with the ability to give you that fulfillment and self-fulfillment, but with every possible integration out there: WMS, ERP, OMS, and support systems, etc. The number is baffling. And that's not even what we initially show brands that we present our platform to. They have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's all there under the hood. Is if you're going to drive a Ferrari, you're not going to start by opening the hood. You just want to get a feel for that. You want to hear that engine,
You want to take it for a test drive. You want to get the visceral
and
feel.
for us, let me feel it. And that's why we start where we start, which is, let's start with the things that are going to make the biggest impact. Let's improve your customer experience by making that delivery promise something that we know you can keep before we even get under the hood. And there's a lot of money on the table just providing that. The tip of the spear for us is, let's communicate this to the customer first, and then let's continue optimizing your operation to make it better and better.
And how do you guys, because you are a platform, you're a SaaS platform, you deliver it via SaaS, and so how do you guys make your money? Do you base it on the number of shipments that you're managing? Do you base it on a tiered model, gold, silver, bronze? How do you guys make your money? Do you bill by module and by service that you're delivering to the merchant? How do you guys make sure that you are being fairly compensated for the value that you're bringing, because you cover such a full spectrum of the customer experience, and for that matter, of the merchant experience too?
So because we're merchants, we tried thinking about it, or standing in the shoes of the merchants, and figuring out our pricing. And there's a good chance that we're not actually benefiting from every value, because we put out a new release every 10 days. So that means there's constantly features coming out. But we've taken the approach, at least now, and it's been that way since we started, of an all-you-can-eat buffet. And basically, if you get the checkout, you get the operational components, most of what you need to manage your operation comes in that all-you-can-eat buffet. And then there are some additional elements. So if you're doing self-fulfillment or some additional components that are really different latch-on modules, then we price that separately. But everything else is an all-you-can-eat buffet based on the volume of orders that you have on tiers. So you can lock into a tier, you can do predictable pricing, you can anticipate what your cost is going to be for the next 12 months easily. And the only change will be, hopefully, will come from growth of your business, which is obviously what we're here to do. So we get the benefit as well. But you're talking about pennies per order, nothing very significant. And for us, our ROI, the way that we promise our brands is to demonstrate that we can give them significant multiples on their ROI, typically 10x or higher. And in many cases, it's even more than that.
Wow, feels very much like a no-brainer. And if we were to look out 12, 18 months from now, is there anything you don't do today that customers are already asking for, or have you identified additional gaps in the market or additional integrations that you don't have today that if you were to look out 12 months, you say, we want to be doing this in 12 months that we don't do today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there are two or three different components to what we're looking at when we think about the future. One is certainly integrations. We have a team that does nothing but integration. So that's never going to end. It never ends. There's always another platform, another thing that we haven't seen, or even something legacy that we're only meeting now. So integrations is going to be part of our future forever. There's no way around that. A second part of what we're looking at, which is interesting, is looking at our collection of brands and seeing behavior of customers that are like from the world of social. When you think about a lookalike, we've been able to extract behavior patterns and bring that into each of the brands. That's been really interesting. That pattern recognition is something that's playing more and more a role into our recommendations and the way that we're optimizing. And I would say in 12 months to 18 months from now, we're really trying to get to a place of an autonomous checkout. Now, crazy concept, almost like autonomous driving, and with the same risks, people have died. But I don't mean to that level, but there is a big risk. And one of the reasons, even though we have that capability to a great extent today, we need to educate the brands and show them what's possible themselves and have their hands on the levers so that they're actually still controlling their business. But there's going to be this hybrid concept where more and more of what they're doing is going to be naturally personalized with recommendations and getting them to a place where more and more of what they're doing will be autonomous. Don't think it'll be 100%, but more of what they're doing, they're going to be able to depend on the machine to make the right decisions in that moment. Because as you've highlighted a number of times, Jason, that checkout's just a couple of milliseconds. So no one can really get involved or really be in that particular moment together with the customer. But we can take all the data we have to influence and inform that customer in a way that's most likely to get them to convert and convert in the most profitable way possible for the brand.
And how do you think about the world of opportunity in B2B? Because at the moment you're focused on Shopify, at the moment you're focused on B2C, D2C, but man, there is a whole new suite of problems in the B2B world in terms of personalizing at the account level versus the individual buyer level. There is price lists, and so unique prices per customer per account. There's 101 additional challenges in the B2B world around this entire thing. And there's similar amounts of friction in the B2B checkout as there is in the B2C and D2C checkout, but you've got all the same challenges from B2C and D2C, but then you've got a whole bunch more layered on top of that. And so the onion gets even bigger in the B2B world. But the opportunity there is ginormous. And so I'm wondering, has it ever crossed your mind? Have you had any B2B brands come to you and say, look, we have some serious challenges here that we would love for you to help us solve, but we realize it's a little bit outside your wheelhouse today? Is this a part of the market that when you feel like you're maybe 80, 90, 95% of the way there solving for the challenges of most B2C and D2C use cases, you're going to go, okay, now we can turn all this firepower to the B2B world because it's a totally different beast?
Yeah. And our conversation, as you mentioned, Isaiah brought us into this because Isaiah is so fundamentally focused on B2B. He understands it, lives it, breathes it, eats it, sleeps it, and encourages me every day. And it doesn't take a lot of encouraging. I love B2B, and I love it even more because the evolution of B2B is looking so much more like D2C every single day. The
Yeah.
challenges, it wasn't apparent in the beginning, but it's
No.
becoming so much clearer that those differences and separations are less and less as time passes. But that's not to minimalize what's involved in making it happen. It's a real commitment. And for the most part, so far, we've taken the B2B light path, which is the Shopify has B2B. Most of our brands are implementing it, deploying it, they're benefiting from that kind of implementation. as we've been moving more up market, we're meeting much more complex B2B requirements. And it means that we have to think about it differently. We're not there yet, but it's something we're definitely committed to in 2025.
I absolutely love that, and it's just a whole new kettle of opportunity for you guys and for the merchants that you serve. Very impressive. Now, listen, Avi, an hour has absolutely blown by. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really enjoy, like I said right from the very beginning, I love people that have strong opinions born out of personal experience and feeling genuinely the pain that merchants feel and getting as close to that pain as possible instead of trying to be at arm's length from the pain, getting into the trenches with them and trying to solve that pain alongside them as a true partnership. I really respect you for getting into the weeds of this challenge because it is a tough one. It is a big, hairy, audacious goal for you and what you're trying to solve for. So very impressive. Congratulations to you on even building what you have so far. Big kudos to you and your team. But if people want to get a hold of you, if merchants want to get a hold of you, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well as a link to Prettydamnquick website. Other than that, if people want to get a hold of you and have a chat to you about this big challenge called Checkout Logistics and Customer Experience, how should they reach out to you?
Yeah, I love reaching out to people. We're here to help, even if our solution is not the right solution. We just have a lot of experience and knowledge in this space. Whether you're looking for a new 3PL or trying to figure out how to manage a pick and pack or anything like that, or where to locate your facilities, we even help with that. If we can be helpful in any way, email avi@prettydamnquick.com, LinkedIn, and just reach out on our website. Any which way, you'll find it easy to reach me, and I'm very approachable. I encourage you. I love learning about new businesses, and I encourage you to benefit from the experience that we have, either myself or from our team.
Very generous of you, Avi, and I love that. I love that approach, and I love that mentality. I have a huge amount of respect for you for that. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get a chance to flip the script and hand the microphone over to you. Let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. Avi Moskowitz from Prettydamnquick. What is your question for me today?
I'll ask a big one then. What's the most important thing you're working on right now?
It's right now, the most important thing that I'm working on in my life happens to not be a business challenge. It happens to be a personal challenge. My wife and I are just in the process. My wife and I are just in the process of buying a townhouse here in Puebla City, Mexico. And the process for buying property in Mexico is an interesting beast. There's a lot of governmental paperwork, and it's a big beast of a red tape process. We've been to see our notario, who's also an attorney, because notarios in Mexico have to be attorneys by law. And so the amount of paperwork we've had to sign has been phenomenal. The amount of hoops we've had to jump through has been phenomenal, but we see in the light at the end of the tunnel. And at this stage, planned move-in date is August 31st. So we're very excited about that. It's a huge step for us to put down some roots here in this country after traveling around Mexico for all of 2023 and deciding on Puebla as the place we'd like to be for the foreseeable future. It's a big step for us, and we're very much looking forward to it. And fortunately, because the cost of living being what it is in Mexico, we're going to be debt-free. We're not taking out a mortgage. We're paying cash for it. I hate debt. I have an almost allergic reaction to debt, and I try to avoid debt wherever I possibly can. So to be able to be debt-free when we move into this new townhouse is an exciting prospect for us.
I asked a simple question, and you've opened up a whole other podcast, because why do we work so hard? So that you can have these special experiences and places, and you're building something where hopefully there'll be incredible memories for the rest of your foreseeable time. And then the whole debt-free thing, we'll have another conversation about that, because absolutely, that's the right approach.
100%. I love it. I love it. Listen, this has been such a joy. You're such a character, and you're such a, the passion that you have for this industry and the passion you have for people and helping people is absolutely palpable. I'm really super grateful for Isaiah joining us together. It's been a fantastic conversation. I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jason. Really incredible opportunity, and what a pleasure. The questions and the interactions, it really was fun. Doesn't feel like it was an hour. So thank you so much for that.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.